Exodus chapter 7, verse 1. And the Lord said to Moses, "See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and your brother Aaron shall tell Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go out of his land. But I," underline verse 3, "but I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my signs and wonders of the land of Egypt, Pharaoh will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring out my host, my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by my great acts of judgment." Underline verse 5. "The Egyptians shall know that I am the" what? "The Lord." Capital Lord. The translator's letting you know that that Lord is not just a Lord like a boss. It's Lord meaning what? Yahweh. When you see capital Lord in your Bible, that's not a random, oh, they misspelled that or they did that weird. That's the translator's way of letting you know in Hebrew, that's the covenant name of God, which is Yahweh. He's not Amun-Ra from Egypt. He's not Heket. He's not Geb. He's none of the pantheon of Egyptian gods. He is the ever-living true God of Israel, Yahweh. He's known by his name. So when you see that in your Bible, the capital Lord, it's letting you know, it reads like this. "The Egyptians shall know that I am Yahweh when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out the people of Israel from among them." Moses and Aaron did so. They did just as the Lord commanded them. Now Moses was, how old was he? 80 years old. Then you guys think, dude, Moses was like 34 drinking Red Bull. He was like a young, strong buck going to do some work for God. Moses is ancient. 80-year-olds, I apologize. Ready? No wonder Moses needed a staff. He could have applied for Medicare and got it. He could go to Denny's for lunch and get a discount. So I want you to put this in your mind. Moses isn't some young buck that God sent to go rescue the people of Israel. Moses is 80 years old. He's a senior citizen with a staff in his hand, and God says, go do this work. If there's ever a guy you're not going to send, it's some 80-year-old guy that spent the majority of his time herding sheep. And you can't speak. What a train wreck this must have been for Moses. But guess what? God says, I choose you. I'm going to do something great with you. And it's not because you're awesome. It's because I'm awesome as God. And I'm going to use you to do something amazing. Verse 8, "Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when Pharaoh says to you, prove yourselves by working a miracle, then you shall say to Aaron, take your staff and cast it down before Pharaoh, that it may become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron cast down his staff before the Pharaoh and his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh summoned the wise men and sorcerers, and they, the magicians of Egypt, also did the same things by their secret arts. For each man cast down his staff, and it became a serpent. But Moses' staff swallowed up their staffs." Okay. "Still," verse 13, "still Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen to them, as the Lord had said. Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he goes out to the water. Stand on the bank of the Nile to meet him, and take in your hand the staff that turned into a serpent. And you shall say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But so far you've not obeyed. Thus says the Lord, thus says Yahweh. By this you shall know that I am Yahweh. Behold, with the staff that is in my hand, I will strike the water that's in the Nile, and it shall turn to blood. The fish in the Nile shall die, and the Nile will stink, and the Egyptians will grow weary from drinking water from the Nile. And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your staff and stretch your hand out over the waters of Egypt, over the rivers, their canals, their ponds, and the pools of water, so that they will become blood. And there shall be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, even in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded. In the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants, he lifted up his staff and he struck the water of the Nile, and all the water in the Nile turned to blood, and the fish in the Nile died, and the Nile stank, so that the Egyptians could not drink water from the Nile. There was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. But the magicians of Egypt did the same by their secret arts. So Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, and he would not listen to them as the Lord had said. Pharaoh turned and went into his house, and he did not even take this to heart. And all the Egyptians dug along the Nile for water to drink, for they could not drink the water of the Nile. 7 full days passed after the Lord had struck the Nile. Chapter 8, verse 1. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go into Pharaoh and say to him, 'Thus says the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will plague your country with frogs. The Nile shall swarm with frogs that shall come up into your house and into your bedroom and onto your bed and into the houses of the servants and your people and into your ovens and into your kneading bowls. The frogs shall come up on you and on your people and on all of your servants.' And the Lord said to Moses, 'Say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with the staff over the rivers, over the canals, and over the pools, and make the frogs come up on the land of Egypt.' So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. But the magicians did the same by their secret arts and made frogs come up on the land of Egypt as well. Then Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron and said, 'Plead with Yahweh to take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go to sacrifice to Yahweh.' Moses said to Pharaoh, 'Be pleased to command me when I am to plead for you and for your servants and for your people, that the frogs may be cut off from you and your houses and only be left in the Nile.' And he said, 'Tomorrow.' So Moses said, 'Be it as you say, so that you may know that there is no one like Yahweh, our God. The frogs shall go away from you, and your houses and your servants and your people, they shall be left only in the Nile.' So Moses and Aaron went out from the Pharaoh, and Moses cried to the Lord about the frogs, as he had agreed with the Pharaoh. And the Lord did according to the word of Moses. The frogs died out in the houses, in the courtyards, and in the field. They gathered them together in heaps, and the land stunk." So there's a lot of stinking going on in this story. Verse 15. But when Pharaoh saw, underline verse 15. But when Pharaoh saw that there was a respite or a stopping of the frogs, he hardened his heart, and he would not listen to them, as the Lord had said. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Say to Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the earth, that it may become gnats in all the land of Egypt." And they did so. And Aaron stretched out his hand with his staff and struck the dust of the earth. And there were gnats on man and beast. All the dust of the earth became gnats in all the land of Egypt. The magicians tried by their secret arts to produce gnats, but they could not. So there were gnats on man and beast. Then the magician said to the Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen to them, as the Lord had said. Have you ever had a hard heart toward God? There's a way that you can know that you have a hard heart toward God. In many ways, you can't see it. Other people can't see it in you, but you know in your own heart if you're hard toward God. It's a feeling you get, and I can't really explain it. It's a feeling you get when you are disappointed in life. Your marriage hasn't gone the way you wanted to. Parenting hasn't gone. You've lost a child. Tragedies happened in your life. True story. Yesterday, I was getting some stuff for the sermon today. I'm walking in Target, walking out to my car. These kids, probably a boy 8, 9 years old, and his sister was chasing him. She was probably 6, 7 years old. Go sprinting by me as I'm walking out to my truck. Sprinting by. A lady pulling out from the other side of the parking. I'm walking alongside the row, so my vehicle's here. She was over here. She pulled through the parking this way, and the kid in the car slammed right into each other, and he was about 1 second too late from being run over. So the car was there. He bounced literally right off her front quarter panel and fell right next to the tire. So, and Dad was trailing. He had been incapacitated. It looked like he broke his arm or something. But Dad was trailing them, and it happened right in front of me, like right here. She just pulled through, and bam, she couldn't have seen the kid. The kid couldn't have seen her. He was running full speed. She was driving. It wasn't really anybody's fault. It was just the reality that literally in 1 second, kid dead. It could have been that. You could have just hit the kid and dead right in front of me in Target, right when you're coming out buying milk. Like just a regular, normal course of life. You walk out to the parking lot and your kid's dead. You went to go get milk, and now you got to plan a funeral. So watch how this works. Ready? In your life and mine, we don't get to control everything. God decides some things. We get, as we live, either angry or bitter at God. Things didn't work out the way you wanted them to. And watch how this works. Slowly over time, you might not even realize it, but your heart becomes hard toward God. Maybe when you were younger, in your teens or your college years, you were on fire for God. You really loved God a lot. You were like, God, whatever you want, wherever you want me to take me, I'll go. But as we get older and get disappointed, kind of like your real heart, and you don't take care of it, or you got a genetic thing, your heart becomes calcified, and it doesn't work as well. It has to work harder to make things work in your body. It's the same thing spiritually. Only you can take an inventory of your heart and go, I think my heart's getting hard toward God. And that's exactly what happened to Pharaoh. He had pressure on him to change, but he chose, instead of getting soft toward God, he got hard toward God. And that's what we see this morning. Number one, Moses begins to show God's strength. Moses begins to show God's strength. After Moses complained that God's plan didn't work, so last week, he showed up, did all these miracles. He thought the people were going to be stoked. He thought Egypt was going to be like, wow, you got some power. We're going to let these people go. They didn't. Pharaoh said, forget that. I don't care what you want to do. And the people said, life just got harder. I thought you were going to save us. Now we're getting beat. So get out of here, Moses. Moses is totally disappointed, and he complains to God, why'd you even send me? That was last week. God, your plan didn't work. It's a failure. But God goes, hang on, I'm not done. God declared he would show Egypt the power of the true God. Though Aaron's staff became a snake that ate the magician's snakes, the Pharaoh was unimpressed. So watch. In Egypt, which was cultic and relied on magicians and astrology to figure out the future, like many of us still do. We read your horoscope or go to that little shack in Old Town and get your palm read or whatever. Understand this. 3,500 years ago in ancient Egypt, they had magicians and astrologers and occultists that would help the Pharaoh to know what to do. They were the wise men of that day. In their day, we don't know how the magicians were able to pull off this trick. I don't know if it was a hypnotized snake or something like that looked like a staff, or maybe it was truly a work of Satan. But they were able to, once Aaron came in with the staff, he made wood come to a living snake, and the magicians came in and took their snake, and it became living. But here's the thing. Aaron's snake starts eating all the other snakes. This is eating a snake. Ready? So watch how this works. In a society that's reliant on cultic vision and power, when one guy's snake starts to eat all the others, and Pharaoh's looking at this going, okay, so my guys kind of did the same thing as Aaron did, but now Aaron's snake is eating everybody else's. So the magicians show up with their staff, very similar to most shows even to our day, like Merlin or the magicians or Harry Potter or whatever. You got a little wand or you got a little walking stick or whatever. In most cultic societies, there's power in those things. At least they would consider that. So watch. When Aaron's snake eats everybody else's, and the magicians go home with no thing, what happened to your magic thing? Oh, it got eaten when we went to see Pharaoh. You know, they go home to their wives and they're like, what happened to your magic stick? This weird thing happened. It turned into a snake. Yeah, you've done that a couple times before. Yeah, but then this other guy showed up, and it ate mine. So watch. All their power would have symbolically resided in the staff. Aaron's staff eats all of theirs. Pharaoh should have gone, I don't know what's going on here, but Aaron, you're the daddy. You're the big daddy. You brought the snake that actually ate everybody else's. So you would go, among all of these magicians, you're the winner. In this competition between Who's the daddy? Aaron's the daddy. He at least should have saw that as an occultic, believing in the occult. But Pharaoh hardens his heart and doesn't even go with that simple reality. The next morning, so the next day, Moses met the Pharaoh at the river where he may have been performing a ritual to Hapi, the god of the Nile. Hapi was worshipped as the nourisher of Egypt through the annual rising of the river and its life-giving elements such as fish and birds that live in it. Aaron then took the staff and turned the Nile ponds and even jars of water and homes to blood, killing every living thing in the Nile, and the people had to dig to find drinking water. So think about this. So let's pretend our little river behind us right there is like the river Nile for Temecula. And everybody in Temecula, Murrieta, comes to the orchard to get some water, to drink. And wonderful things live in our little river back there. They don't. Don't go drink the water that's in there now. This is illustration, okay? Let's pretend the Orchard River fed all of the Temecula Valley. Everybody comes to our river, scoops, gets water, drinks, feeds their cattle. It's the life-giving piece to our desert. At some point, Pastor Larry gets mad at the city, and he takes his wand, takes his staff, and strikes our river, and it turns to total blood. You show up, hey, sweetie, will you run down to the river and get us some water? Sure, Mommy, I will. Takes a little bucket from Home Depot, a little orange bucket, and goes down there and ready to scoop. It's blood, and the fish are floating. And your little daughter comes back with their little orange bucket going, dude, we can't, the Orchard River is blood. Sweetie, it's not blood. It's blood. And pretty soon everybody's going, where's our drinking water? Some of the people just like you and me, if you're like a person that gets ready for an earthquake, you go buy all those little, whatever they call them, hordes of water, and you got a bunker at home or whatever. You dug a bunker in the backyard and you're storing stuff. You're like, there's going to be a bomb, and so we got to store all stuff. If you're like that, you've gone, you know what, don't worry about it, sweetie. Even though we couldn't get water from the Temecula River or by the Orchard River, we have water at home. I bought a whole flat of water from Costco. I bought a whole flat of Arrowhead water in sealed bottles. And so you go out into your garage, and you lift up your garage, and you're like, don't worry, guys, because Mom nagged me, and she's like, please get some water because you never know when something's going to happen. We have planned ahead. Let's go, family, into our garage. Let's all get a bottle of blood. Watch this miracle. God just doesn't turn the river into blood and kill everything. He actually turns water inside the home, inside of jars, inside of wooden pillared things that held water into blood. It's a miracle. The Egyptian magicians, they come up with some kind of incantation that makes water maybe look like blood or whatever, but it gave enough evidence to the Pharaoh that he could harden his heart. Even though the magicians couldn't do what Aaron did, he gave them enough excuse. He gave the Pharaoh enough excuse to say, it's probably the same thing. My guys are as powerful as Aaron. Aaron just manipulated nature. And nobody controls nature. You can be fooled by hand tricks, right? We all love a good magician. Or you see those shows where, those hidden camera shows where the magician, he does stuff and people are amazed and we're like, God, that's awesome how he did that. It's one thing to do a little trick of the hand. It's another thing to go out to the ocean and go, be blood. No, you can control some stuff, but you don't control nature. You know who controls nature? Only God. And when the Pharaoh sees nature change, his heart should have changed. But it doesn't. It stays hard. Aaron then took the staff and turned the Nile ponds and even jars of water in homes to blood, killing every living thing in the Nile, and the people had to dig to find drinking water. After the magicians mimicked the blood, Pharaoh was unmoved. The next week, Moses caused an invasion of frogs into Egypt's homes, beds, dishes, and on their bodies. How many of you guys love frogs? Anybody love frogs? Frogs are kind of awesome. There's nothing too nasty about frogs. So I grew up in north central Minnesota, up in the sticks, way up in the woods, marshland in the summer. And I remember stomping around in my days of my youth, and there'd just be these frogs that would come flying out of the marshes. Here's the thing. It's fun to go visit frogs where they live. It's not fun when frogs come to visit you where you live. So it's cool if you want to go, pet a frog or whatever, and kiss a frog. Hopefully it turns into an awesome husband for you or whatever. The stories we have of frogs, but it's different when they come hopping into your home, when they hop into your car, when they hop up onto your counters and get in your bowls that you make your family dinner with, and they're sticking to your body, and they get inside your clothes. It's disgusting, because who knows what those frogs are dragging into your life. God sends millions of frogs into Egypt. Frogs were considered sacred in Egypt as an emanation of the goddess Heket, who was linked to birth and fertility. And so I want to show you a picture of Heket. This is from a Egyptian relief carving, and Heket is down here on the far right. She was known as the midwife or the goddess of fertility, and she has a woman's body, female body, with a frog head. So if you think you're not very good looking, Heket has got you beat in every way. So the Egyptians would have made this female, anatomically female, but with a frog head to represent how frogs breed in the Nile. So in our society, we have the same kind of thing. If somebody gets married and has a kid like every 9 months or whatever, we'd say you are breeding like rabbits, right? In our society, it's like, rabbit, what, you having a kid every 9 months? Like, you're multiplying, you're filling the earth with your family. Same thing in Egypt. They wouldn't look to rabbits, they would look to frogs, because that's what was common to them. They came up with a goddess called Heket, and that's her husband, and he is fashioning a man out of clay, and Heket is giving the clay man life. So it's very similar to Genesis 1 and 2, where God actually gives men and women life from the dirt, from the dust. Heket is, you see the ankh there, the little staff, is leaving her hand to go inside of this man of clay to become living. So the Egyptians, the occultic idea of how men and women lived and how people were created was kind of embodied in this Heket. Watch this. They think Heket is in charge of the frogs. Moses goes, watch this. You want frogs? I'll give you some frogs. You want some fertility? I'll give you some fertility. Boom, millions of frogs come into their homes, onto their clothes, disgusting into their lives. Urinating, defecating all over their homes. Millions of frogs. God is saying, hey, Heket isn't even real. She's a woman with a frog's head. I am the living God. I control nature. I control everything that happens on the earth. You're trusting in Heket? She's not even real. I am the God of Israel, and I'm real. And so the Pharaoh has a chance to change, but he chooses not to. The magicians also produced some sort of frogs, but couldn't rid the land of them, so Moses was asked to stop them. God then killed the frogs, and they stunk up the whole land. You ever had something die in your wall? You ever tried to kill a rodent or something, and unfortunately it doesn't run outside and die, it goes inside your wall? I don't know if you've ever had the unfortunate event of something dying inside your wall, but the smell comes right through the sheetrock, and it wafts over you. And I remember things dying. I've had a cat happen a couple times in my life as me and my wife have moved to different places. It gets so bad with one thing dying that you want to cut a hole in the sheetrock and pull that thing out rather than letting it sit there and decompose inside your wall. Because it usually takes weeks for the smell to go away. Imagine millions of frogs. Hey, Heket is here. Nope. The God of Israel's here. And these millions of frogs come, and you know what? The magicians could produce some sort of frog, but they couldn't get rid of them, which says that you have no power. So they ask Moses, will you please get rid of these frogs? And so, you know what I love about God? He goes, okay, I'll get rid of them. He kills all of them. So the only thing worse than a hopping frog is a frog that doesn't hop anymore. And if it's one, cool. If it's 10, If it's millions, you're in trouble. They have to go, in our day and age, they would have run down to Home Depot or Lowe's and got a snow shovel and started piling up all these dead frogs. And listen, Egypt is very similar to Southern California in its topography and its heat, even a little bit hotter. Imagine piles of millions of frogs decomposing. And it says the whole land stank with these frogs. And Moses says, you learned your lesson yet, Pharaoh? Pharaoh goes, you know what? This is horrendous. Why don't you take the people and go? Watch what happens. Pharaoh agrees to let the people go, but when the frogs stop, he goes back on his promise. Ever gone back on your promise to God once the pain stopped? Remember those promises you made to God when your relationally things weren't going well, or you're in physical pain and you go, God, if you heal this excruciating pain in the back of my neck, I'm going to love my wife forever. Or I'm going to talk to my husband sweet for the rest of his life if you get rid of this pain in my head. All of a sudden, the pain goes away in a day, and you're like, oh, sweetie, what's your problem? You go back to your old ways. Watch how this works. God brings pain into your life to test your heart. Sometimes, watch, pain will mold your heart so that you become a man or woman of God. But many times, once the pain stops, we go back to our old ways. It's like being a drug addict, or if you're addicted to alcohol. When you do something to numb the pain or to just stop thinking about it, you habitually go back to the same thing. But you hate it because it's wrecking your life, it's wrecking your marriage, it's wrecking your parenting, you might lose your job because you can't control it. You know you need to get rid of it, but in some habitual respect, you always come back to it because you're stressed out or whatever. Whatever your excuse is, you go back to that thing. Once you get clean, though, and your mind gets clear, you go, oh, gosh, it's so good to be free from alcohol, or it's so good to be free from those prescription drugs I was on. Man, thank you, God, that I cleaned up my life. But watch. When the pain comes back, that says if you've really changed. When the stress of work comes back, or the stress of your relationships come back, and you just unwind back into your old habits, that shows you whether your heart was molded to be godly or whether it hardened. Because pain exposes the quality of your heart. And the Pharaoh went from, I have a hard heart, to, I should have been submissive to God, but instead it says he hardened his heart even harder. Pharaoh wanted relief, not repentance. Pharaoh wanted relief from the pain. He did not want to repent and come to God. Repentance means you turn away from the way you're going against God and walk toward God. You repent of the way you're going and go a different way. Pharaoh just wanted the pain to go away. He didn't want his heart to change. And that's the reality for many of us. We just want the pain to go away. We don't like pain, but we don't want to change. And so God has to cyclically keep bringing pain back into our lives because we don't learn our lesson. Are we done yet? Are we done yet? Are we done yet? Is your heart different? And for the Pharaoh, it didn't get better. It continued to be hard. Number one was Moses begins to show God's strength. Number two, the Pharaoh begins to show his stubbornness. We got any stubborn people in the house? All the real stubborn people didn't raise their hand. I ain't raising my hand. You ain't gonna tell me what to do. Forget that. So all the real stubborn people didn't even raise their hands. So there's a lot of stubborn people in here. All of us are stubborn. All of us are stubborn at different levels. And Pharaoh exposes his own heart through his stubbornness. In response to the Pharaoh, Moses brings out biting gnats or fleas from the dust as a challenge to Geb, the god of the earth. And they cover the ground, animals, and people. So here's a picture of Geb. He is known as the god of the earth. And so he was often painted or colored green. And he was known as having a duck on his head. So imagine walking around with a duck on your head if you were a real person. But Geb was either known as, he had a man's body with a goose I'm sorry, not a duck, a goose's neck and a goose's head. Or he was known as a green-colored god with a goose actually sitting on his head. So it was the idea of he controlled everything that came out of the ground, everything that grew out of the ground. Geb, their god of the earth, controlled. And very interestingly, Aaron says, I am going to bring out gnats from the earth. And so he strikes the ground, and from the dust, God builds gnats or fleas. I don't know if you've ever been to Minnesota or the Midwest in the summer. There's a thing, there's a state bird called the mosquito in Minnesota. And so gnats are those little flies that just get in your face. You can never get rid of them. They're just irritating beyond belief. But fleas or sort of mosquitoes, they come at you relentlessly, and they're not here to just say, hi, we're here. They're here to say, I need some blood out of your system. And so they will literally suck blood out of you and just create these welts, and it's nasty. So this wasn't mosquitoes, but understand, it was something so irritating and biting, it landed on all the people, on all the animals. The animals couldn't get rid of it. The people couldn't get rid of it. It came into their houses. It bit them at night. And it was a direct challenge to Geb. Oh, Geb, you control the ground? I don't think so. I can strike the ground, and literally like Genesis 1, where God builds all the animals out of the dust of the ground, he goes, I can do that again. And out of the dust he builds fleas or gnats or whatever they were, and it irritated them to the point that they couldn't even function as a nation. God is at work again to show how strong he is. That all of these things are figments of your imagination, Egypt. I am the true God. Though the magicians were able to emulate some of the miracles, they couldn't reverse its effects, and they couldn't duplicate the gnats. And when that happened, they recognized God's hand. Despite this, the Pharaoh doesn't listen and hardens his own heart in chapter 8, verse 15. So God, at the burning bush, told Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hard. Before you even go, I'm telling you, Pharaoh's heart is hard, and he will not listen to you. So Pharaoh's had a heart that was hard before God even worked on it. And then it says God hardened Pharaoh's heart. So he took what was already hard and he hardened it even more so that Pharaoh wouldn't let the people go so God could show his strength over all the Egyptian gods. Why would God have to harden a heart that's already hard? Because there's a reality where if you won't repent, God will use you to show his strength to other people. You watch how crazy this is. If you don't repent, if you stay hard in your heart going, God, I'm just going to do my own thing. If that becomes your life motto, you don't soften your heart toward God, God will use you to show other people how strong he is. In a really ironic way, you become the evidence of how awesome God is. Even when you rebel against God, God still shows how awesome he is. And that's exactly what God did with the Pharaoh. Rebellious hearts will look for any reason not to believe. You look for any kind of hocus pocus to not believe in the real God because you want to run your own life. It happens to all of us because we're rebellious. We want to do our own thing. Testing exposes the quality of the heart and either hardens or purifies it. Though all lives feel pain, a godly heart is purified in the fire and becomes like gold after testing. God told Moses beforehand the Pharaoh was stubborn and wouldn't let the people go. So God chose to harden his heart additionally to expose it for what it already was and extend Egypt's punishment to clarify the power of Israel's God. The true heart of people should glorify the true God. Now, for many of us, our lives have been one constant battle with God. And God, who loves us incredibly and amazingly, allows different things to happen in our lives. So when God comes to our lives and says, I want you to change, many of us go, I'm not interested in changing. So here's what God does. Because he loves you so incredibly much, he gives you an opportunity to change. So, for most of us, we get the option. Many of these if you hadn't experienced these before, these materials, you would go, they're very similar. They're smooth, they're cool, they're hard. They look very similar. If you had never experienced these, you'd go, different color, but similar material. But what the value of God in our lives is not that he does everything we want. The value of God is he puts us to the test. And one of the ways you put things to the test is you put it to fire. Now, God puts all of our hearts to test. He put Pharaoh's to the test, he'll put you to the test. You will get to see what kind of material your heart is made of. You will not see it in ease, you will see it in challenge. You will see it when things don't go the way you want it to go. Over time, you will see your heart either become compliant and submissive to God, or it becomes harder. Actually, your heart will become more of what it already is. It will not become a different material, it will become either submissive or non-submissive. What Pharaoh's heart should have done was this. It should have become different. It should have listened, but it didn't. Actually, this is what happened to Moses, because Moses' heart was hard. He didn't want to go, but Moses changed. Moses became a different man with a different heart. And God did amazing things with Moses. However, some of us are this. And no matter how much heat I apply to this, it will never change. Its material is the same all the way through. It may smoke a little bit. Hopefully we don't set off the fire alarm. But you will realize, at the end of this, that it's the same. It will never change. In fact, the more heat I apply to it, the harder it becomes. And if it was a different material, like the one I just had, you would see the difference between these. But you don't see the difference until there's pressure, until there's heat, until there's challenge. And many of our hearts are like this. Many of our hearts are like the Pharaoh. God has put us to the test, and we have hardened our heart, not become compliant. And so this morning, you need to see what kind of material your heart is made out of. Because at the end of the day, when the pain goes away, have you become different or have you become the same? Actually, a harder version of your younger self. A more bitter version of your younger person. Some of us, God has changed our lives and we've become totally different. Like Moses. Moses went from a hard guy that said, I'm not going. You're not sending me. But he went. He was obedient. He walked with God. And God blessed his life. But Pharaoh had the same opportunity. I want you to do my will. Pharaoh said, not a chance. And he became even harder than he was before. And guess what? His arrogance and pride and hardness is going to destroy his country. We've seen the first 3 plagues. There's 7 more to go. You would think after these things, as an occultist, as a guy who believes in the occult, you would see if a true God is doing this amazing things, you would think his heart would become soft. But instead, his heart got harder because he wanted his will, not God's will. And in the first service, I dropped that rock and had to go pick it up off the carpet, and it burned my hand. So I'm thanking Jesus that I didn't drop it this service. We must realize, watch, just like the Egyptians are going to learn over the next 3 weeks, we must realize that God is God. Not our imaginations of him, not our carvings of him, not what we want him to be. God is who he is. We must come into alignment with God and give our hearts to the Lord, rather than living outside of God's will and hardening it against him. Because God will still work, but we must align ourselves with him to find the blessing of God.